if you're seeing this, it means I actually posted this. I more so thought about just doing this to sort of get things off my chest about this situation. And this is not a typical CKN Reacts. I'm not going to be reading anything to you. I'm just going to be talking. And so if that's not your bag, and if you don't like me maybe talking a little bit about politics, then there's the door. Leave now, because that's what this is about. It really has something to do with the events of Charlottesville from a couple of weeks back, but more so it has to do with an article that was recently published over on MetalSucks, and I think most of you, if you clicked on this video, if it's up, know exactly what I'm talking about. And for those who are kind of out of the loop, who have no idea what's going on, MetalSucks recently published an article. In fact, it was yesterday, Saturday, yeah, days, what are they? And the whole entire deal about this is that it is in the form of an open letter by those who are opposing white supremacy, which, you know, good thing to oppose. But what they are doing is that they are calling out Hell's Headbangers, which is a online distribution of underground heavy metal, and it is one that is pretty large. It has a lot of albums in its available discography. It's certainly one that if you haven't checked it out yet, you probably should, especially if you're a fan of the underground heavy metal departments. But what they are calling for, they are saying that Hell's Headbangers has a lot of albums that are on there that are, you know, pro-white supremacy or pro-Nazism, and that these are being openly distributed, which means, of course, in their eyes, that this is encouragement for everybody and their mother, sister's grandmother to purchase this and, you know, become pro-Nazi or pro-white supremacy themselves. So what they want is for Hell's Headbangers to cease and desist the distribution of these albums. They want them to terminate their contracts with any underground label that perhaps is affiliated solely with this purpose, even if there are just a couple of bands on their roster that happen to fit this mold, even if it's loose-based. Either that, or they want to arrange a full-out boycott of the business. They want metal fans to not actively participate in purchasing albums from Hell's Headbangers for this reason, and this has my head just in so many different places. And a little background about me, for those of you who don't know, I have 2 degrees, and one of them happens to be business management. So business is a thing that is always going to encounter my mind whenever it comes to anything that has to do with a business. So that is partially why some of my opinions are as they are, because of what it is that I'm interested in and what it is that I kind of sort of do. But second of all, based off of what happened in Charlottesville and how everything has sort of exploded into an us versus them, left versus right, very similar to a north versus south mentality. And then there's me, who basically thinks you're all being idiots, and, you know, white supremacy shouldn't be a thing, but Antifa or the people on the other side should not be attempting to convey a message of love with basically language of hate, or, you know, showcasing that through just being completely unable to be talked to or reasoned with or anything. So I'm stuck in this middle, and I'm stuck in this middle where that's a bad thing too. Because inaction is horrible. Inaction is the worst thing possible, because it encourages the white supremacists, the white nationals, the pro-Nazis to do what it is that they're doing. You're encouraging their free speech. You're encouraging everything, and you're not on our side, or you're encouraging that side to be ridiculous and, you know, completely nullify American values of free speech or the American values of blah blah blah. You know, being in the middle is almost worse than being on one of the two sides, but again, that's kind of where I'm at, because, well, to put it very bluntly, art is a thing that's very important to me. It's something where we talk about music on this channel each and every single day, whether it be in stream form or in video form, so it's kind of a cornerstone of what this channel is all about. And the whole idea and concept of separating art from the artist is one that's now coming under fire, considering this artist is a piece of shit. Why should I like their art? Why can I separate? Why, you know, well, I shouldn't have to separate their art, or if I do, it's wrong for me to do that, because it means I'm technically supporting a piece of shit. That's the argument that's being made, and you can kind of understand that, but at the same time, have you ever listened to something just random and not had any idea that it had ties to something else? Have you ever listened to a song and not realize the meaning that was behind it right away, and then you end up reading something, you do some research about it, and you realize that maybe it's about masturbation, or maybe it's about the Nazis, or maybe it's about, Attila the Hun, and you're like, wow, I didn't pick up on that. It sounds like feigned ignorance, but in reality, it's something that's no doubt happened to all of us. Separating art from the artist is not a bad thing. It is still possible to enjoy art for what it is, because that's what it is. It's supposed to be a conscious expression. It's not meant to be an actual depiction of the world that we currently live in. For example, a statue of Robert E. Lee, which was the big event down in Charlottesville, the people were protesting it being taken down and removed. This is something that belongs perhaps in a museum, as opposed to in like a town square or by an educational institution. But even by an educational institution, it has value because it is teaching us about some of the sins of our past. It is teaching us the history of our country, and it's trying to be a nice little loudspeaker, a megaphone as to what we probably shouldn't do in the future. Basically take the sins of our fathers and make them better. Repent for them by being better, by having a better society, not only for ourselves, but for our children's children. And that seems to be a point that is lost on a lot of people. But this here is particularly interesting because of the element of these bands need to be removed from extreme metal, which right there within the terminology, extreme metal, basically is indication of the extreme of society. That's basically indication of the extreme of music, and that's sort of the point of the whole thing. Does that necessarily make some of these hateful messages, these wretched messages, correct? No, it really doesn't. But that's the thing. Where in heavy metal and extreme metal has there ever really been a message that basically says, let's all hug each other like a bunch of hippies? Look at death metal. By listening to death metal, is now everybody becoming a psychopath and deciding to, kill everybody that they see. Listening to black metal, is everybody now burning down churches and opposing Christianity? By listening to thrash metal, are we overthrowing our government? Probably a good thing for us to do here in America. If you want, take a look at things. Just take a look at things. But no, it isn't happening. For so many people and so many artists, this is simply just that. It's art and it's music. So, kind of automatically, that feels like a real defilement of what extreme metal is all about. But then you get to the business aspect of all of this. Then you get to the meat and potatoes of what I look at. And that's the fact that what if I have a business and I just so happen to sell something and make it available to a market which is underground metal fans, and there are some underground metal bands that do have some ties to some, pro-Nazi groups, either that or they at least have some of those allusions within their music. It's something that is talked about. It's something that is studied. It is something that is really read up on. It's a real curious case of interest to a lot of people. Do I immediately stop selling that stuff because of what happened 2 weeks ago? And that's where I have a huge problem with this. Timing. It's all about timing. Whenever something enters into our public perception, whenever something enters into our public view, and does so usually based off of ugliness, then anything that is done innocently or prior that has caused absolutely no problem, all of a sudden comes under fire. Basically what happens is that now that we are talking about Nazis again and white supremacy, anything, any sort of art, any sort of music, or any sort of person that has any sort of ties, whether it be in the most loose-based sense that you just listened to one song whenever you were 17 years old and had no idea what it was about, all of a sudden you're being labeled. All of a sudden that label is starting to be thrown out. This is not a patient society. This is not a society where we look at things with a little bit of sense. We don't try to get down to the root of the person. We instead intend and desire to simply label them automatically. And that is a very slippery slope that is going to lead to big problems sooner rather than later. That is my forewarning. Especially whenever you consider now who's riled up. Whenever you consider that now the white supremacists, the pro-Nazis, are now riled up because of what happened in Charlottesville. They aim and they want to create this discord. They think that these protests were a good time, that was fun. And now you are continuing to try to take away some of those things that were just there beforehand, but because they made a stink, are now all of a sudden really bad things. Really, really bad things that should be available to nobody. It's going to rile them up. You're actually poking the bear. Now, I understand that inaction is really just worse because it means that you're letting them stomp all over you. But understand what you're getting into by doing something like this. There's a lot of bands that are upset about this. There's a lot of fans that are upset about this. Principally because to a lot of fans and a lot of bands, this is simply music. This isn't something where they're going to a concert hall and trying to convert every single fan that comes in to become pro-white supremacist, pro-Nazi, pro-Antifa, pro-whatever. This is music and this is art. We understand the despicable nature of the things that happened back during World War II. We understand the despicable nature of slavery before the Civil War here in America. We understand all of those things. And metal fans especially are not fans that are easily swayed or easily influenced by things such as that, considering it's a majority of what we listen to. We listen to things that are on the extreme slice of life. We are not listening to songs that are all about love or getting crunk. We instead like to listen to music that, for us at least, feels like it has substance, may talk about murder, may talk about the evils of the world, and that's the thing that kind of speaks to us. Not because we are inherently evil, but instead because we understand that evil is a part of the world. I know that that's a philosophical element that is incredibly difficult to understand, is extremely wordy, and takes way too much time for some of y'all to digest. I get that. I understand that it's not an easy thing to comprehend, but it is the truth. And I think that this is ridiculous. Again, I will reiterate something. Anything that is, the whole white nationalist and Nazi thing is absurd. And it's ugly, and it's terrible. And you know why it is? It's because this is 2017. This is 2017. Times change and things change. Nazism, slavery, and white supremacy should be things that we are looking at through the glassy eye of history, as opposed to it being something that is once again domineering headlines in our current society. That's not something that needs to be going on. Alright? And then whenever it comes to the opposite side, we need something done that is constructive as opposed to just yelling and screaming and immediately dismissing everything, every side of logic that could potentially showcase a little bit of handshaking, or, worse off, expose the fact that you are being basically just as bad as the other side. You're essentially trying to combat hate with hate. When is that going to end? When? And I can tell you, I already know the answer, and it sure isn't anytime soon, because our ignorance is going to be our downfall. And that's not necessarily just here in America. That is a problem that I feel this whole world suffers from. The bottom line is that this MetalSucks article was absolutely ridiculous. I'm very surprised, actually, that MetalSucks decided to get involved in this way. I understand that they had the intention of sort of showcasing that they are not pro-Nazi or not pro-white supremacy, but, nobody was really questioning that. At least not that I saw. I don't navigate the site daily, so maybe there are a bunch of people that feel that MetalSucks has gone to the other side, to the dark side. They've ate the cookies of white supremacy. They have drank the lemonade of white power, and they have, snorted the cocaine of Nazism. I don't know. But I don't think this was something that really needed to be reiterated or retweeted or given more of the press. If you want to have a boycott of certain bands, if you feel as though it should be made aware that this is what these groups are about, maybe just put the awareness up there. Maybe just indicate that that's what this is about. Give the end user information. That's all that's required. And I have a strange feeling that Hell's Headbangers already does that. I couldn't tell you because I haven't sat down and looked through each and every CD, vinyl, DVD, or whatever that they have available to buy, because it's large. There's a ton over there. Really, if you're into underground metal, I can't recommend it enough. You're going to be in heaven. But once again, just a little bit of an indicator is all that's really necessary. Do we need an all-out boycott? No. Because what you're going to do is that you're going to end up hurting other metal fans. You know, fans that have no association with this. Basically what you're saying is because of a few, the whole have to be punished. And I'll tell you, that just sparks anger. That just sparks a lot of anger and easily vilifies you. Like I said, this is something that could probably be handled with just letting people know which bands are associated, which bands have this little, you know, side to them, and then let the metal fans debate the fuck out of it for the remainder of eternity, like they've already been doing for the past couple of years. I want to know thoughts. Like I said, if you're seeing this, it's posted, and I want to know your thoughts. What do you think about all of this? What do you think about this article? What do you think about where this world is in 2017, especially just a couple of short weeks after the events of Charlottesville, Virginia, if you happen to be an American, or if you are a worldly fan of the nation, or a worldly traveler that just happened to click on this video? What are your thoughts about everything that is going on right now in this world in 2017, where hatred has become such a domineering force, and it seems that the hatreds of old have re-emerged? Let me know what you... Am I off base here? Am I on cue? Where are we? Let me know.